Hello, my name is Pastor Chris Harris, and I am with Grains of Sand Ministry. We do meet here on a weekly basis on Sundays between 9 and 10. We do have a Q&A that we do invite you to be a part of. We're located at 4105 Bells Lane, and it's where we meet in person. We have our video that runs for about 30 minutes, and then we again go off air and we do question and answer. So here we go. So from last week when we started on intro to who the Father is, we barely scratched the surface on that, and I said that I would be coming back after that and we'll be talking about more in depth over the coming weeks about who God is. And basically what this bears out to be is what most people's perception of God is. Most people have an idea about God, and whenever we pick up the Bible, many people go and they'll say such things like, well, everybody's got, their own interpretation of the Bible. Now, all the while that may sound very true, what's actually happened is the Bible is not so much a book that we read and, okay, we're going to grab an understanding out of it, but it's more of a book that reads us. So when you have people's different interpretations and varied things like that, what that bears out to be is that it is someone's giving us their own perspective about how they see God. That's really what it comes down to. But what I'm going to share is going to be and I'm going to start slow. Won't get it all done today because that's not my intention. My intention is to break this thing apart piece by piece and bit by bit, so that in hopes that a new image and maybe a way that you've never seen God is set before you, and it's more of a concrete idea of God to where you can really begin to know how God is in the perspective of God. So I'm going to start in the book of John, verse 1. John chapter 1, verse 1. It says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, we'll back up a little bit here, okay? Because it says here, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, so what is being talked about? First, let's talk about what is being talked about when it talks about beginning. Okay, when it talks about beginning, in the beginning, what is going on here? So the author here, John, he's writing from a perspective of his own, actually. Him being a Jew would have been from a Jewish perspective. And when John is talking about the beginning, he's going all the way back into Genesis. So in the beginning or in Genesis. So most people, when we talk about how God is and, the nature of God, we come up with all of these ideas. And usually the ideas that we come up with are based on things that we have seen and events that we've seen. But I want to draw your attention to, let me go back down here to jump down here to verse 12 here, okay? But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor the will of flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. I'm going to jump over here to verse 16. It says, for from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Verse 18, no one has ever seen God. This is where we get kind of tricky here. The only God who is at the Father's side, he has made him known. Now what this just is talking about here, this is talking about Jesus, the person of Jesus in the earth and revealing God. Before that point, what is being said is that every person that you would hear about did not have an accurate view of how God was. All the way even back to Moses, who is attributed for writing the first 5 books of the Bible. And as great as Moses is, what John is saying is that until this time, no one has ever seen God. nor have they ever known God. The only one that has revealed him is the one at his side, who is Jesus. Now, Jesus made God known to the world. In John 14, Jesus is sitting with his disciples and says, that one of them says, well, show us the Father and it is enough. And then Jesus goes and replies back and says, have I been with you so long that you do not know that I am the Father? Okay, or the Father is in me and the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Okay, he said, if you've seen me, you have seen the Father. And so with this, let me go to John 10. Okay, so John 10:10 says this, that the thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. I came that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. Now, when Jesus is talking about the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, Jesus is technically not talking about a devil. Jesus is actually talking about a system that has robbed people of understanding how God actually is. Now, how we know that is because in the next verse, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Okay? When you look at the previous few verses, let me go from there. Look, verse 2. Jesus says, but he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens, the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Now, I didn't know this, but where sheep are concerned, and where shepherds, because I've never been a shepherd, but looking some research about a shepherd, and there's actually a video out on YouTube about a guy who's an actual shepherd. And what he does a challenge with some teenagers and tells them how to call the sheep over. Well, when the teenagers go and they're trying to call the sheep over, the sheep are ignoring them and they're not even looking up. They're not even trying to come in. The sheep are just still grazing. These kids, I mean, it's several of them, and they're really trying. They're using the same exact method that the shepherd uses. Now, that's an interesting thought. The shepherd told them exactly what to say, and it told them exactly what he says in order to bring the sheep that were all out in the field grazing, to bring them in. Well, these kids took it upon themselves and said, okay, we're going to try this. And they sounded pretty good. They were doing this just like the shepherd that brought his own sheep in did it, but the sheep didn't even look up. They didn't even hear the voice of those that were saying something, and I could hear them. So I know that their voice was traveling, but the sheep weren't listening. And then the shepherd stepped up, and the shepherd began to make the call. And when the shepherd made the call, oh my goodness, the wildest thing I ever saw. This was a large grazing herd, and there were sheep way in the back that started sticking their head up. And when they they didn't just come at first, they stuck their head up like, wait a minute, did you hear that? And heads started popping up out of the grass, left and right. And then one started coming and a few started coming, and they all started rushing toward the voice of the shepherd. Now, this is what this teaches you, is that just because you can parrot the nature of God and you can mimic what may look like God doesn't mean that people are going to hear you and people are going to know who God is. The truth of it is that whenever God is revealed, people should be answering. Somebody should turn around. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about that if you're on your job, you're in school, you're in your neighborhood, even at your church, you should be able to talk with people and people should be able to know God. When you go out to a restaurant somewhere, and I'm just going to say this, when you go out to a restaurant somewhere, I'll just tell you right now that if you talk to most waiters and waitresses, they will tell you that Sundays are their worst day. Why? Because they get a lot of church folk that come out there and are very rude to them. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not revealing Christ. And we can't be about trying to reveal Christ, reveal God, just because we're holding the Bible. Truth is that without giving so much of a scripture or anything, people should get around you and they should know that, wow, they should pick something up different that pulls them in, that is of the nature of God. Here's the thing. Here's another story. This story comes from an author of a book, the Bible translation, called the Mirror Translation. And he talks about these eagles. And there was an eagle that was caught in wasn't caught, well, it was caught in captivity or was in captivity. I think it was hurt, is what it turned out to be. And they nursed this bird back to health, got it to where it was good, and went to go release it into the wild. Well, because it was now so used to being in the confinements that it was in, they tried to put it out of the cage, and the thing turned around and went back in. But because they were in an environment, they took the bird where they let the eagle out, they took it to an environment where they knew there would be other eagles in the area. And so because they knew there would be other eagles in the area, they took and they opened up the cage, and again, they waited. And then when that eagle in the cage heard the cry of the other eagle, it identified with that eagle and it flew right out of the cage and it was free. Now, what was different about that is that in one instance, the people tried to grab them and say, okay, we're going to put you out. And there was nothing for that eagle to identify to. So the eagle turns around and comes back in the cage. Well, then when the eagle heard another eagle, it could actually identify with that eagle, and then it was able to come out of the cage. And I'm going to tell you what that says. That says that if you're going to find out who you actually are, you have to look at your place of origin and where you came from. So when we say Father, when I say Father here at Grains of Sand Ministry, what we're talking about everyone's place of origin. In Hebrew context, names to them were not just labels of something. Names were functionality. When they said a name, they incurred a functionality. And here's the thing. You did not have experience and knowledge about something until you actually, and I use the word again, so I'm gonna use it again, until you actually experienced it. I have people sitting in chairs. I'm sitting in a chair. In Hebrew context though, if I had never sat in this chair, I would not know anything about it. I would not have knowledge about it. My knowledge about this chair only comes after I have first experienced this chair. But now that I've sat in this chair, I've got an idea about it. It's a little wobbly. When I first picked it up, part of it started to come apart, okay? And then I had to push it back down, just being real here. I got, my broadcasting equipment is sitting on the table. So I moved the table. The table's not too heavy. It's square. It's got a few scratches on it. It's not wobbly. It's actually sturdy, but very light. But at first look, it looks heavy. Now, why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because I'm saying I know the table and I know the chair because I've experienced them. And in Hebrew context, you don't know anything until you first experience something. Once you experience it, then you actually have knowledge about it. You can talk about it. Let me say it like this. If you're going to go to a doctor or a dentist, okay, you're not going to go to a doctor. You walk into the doctor's office and the doctor says, hey, by the way, I went to school. I did all the study work in the books. I am graduated top of my class, a straight A student. And then the doctor looks at you and says, but I've never had any experience practicing on anybody. Now, in the medical field, that doesn't actually happen. They actually take you through a process where you have to practice on people, live practice, and they watch you. They have somebody that watch you. I have some people in family that work in the medical field, and I got the privilege to see some things, not physically, but just when they were telling me about the process they went through, and I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool how they actually do that. But anyways, here's the thing. The doctor walks in and tells you all this, graduated top of their class, and then they tell you, I've never practiced on anybody. Are you going to let them begin to now practice beginning with you? No. Or you take your car to an auto shop and they have all these certifications on the board, and then they look at you and they say, the mechanic comes up, I got all these certifications on the board that I'm certified to do this, but I've actually never used that wrench over there. I've never actually worked on anything. I've just done it all in books. Are you going to let them work on your car? No, you're not going to do that. Why? Because they haven't had live experience. Do you know how companies, that get reputable names become reputable, and they become ones that when they say the name, they're like, oh yeah, that one, yeah. Just go to them, they're great. Because that company has built a legacy of experience working with something. And here's the thing, you become good at something by spending time repetitively over and over beating on the craft of it. You can become good at something that you don't like. You can become good at things that are unhealthy. Did you know that? You can become good and conditioned to things that are not good for you. You can become conditioned to being called out of your name. I worked with somebody years ago, and he come up to me, he told me, he had a nickname that everybody called him, and he told me, he says, well, Chris, this is my name. He told me his name, his birth name, and then he says, but everybody calls me Dirt Bomb, and you can call me Dirt. And I sat there with a look on my face that some of you might have right now. Dirt Bomb. And I told him this, I said, okay, exactly what I said. I'm not gonna call you Dirt Bomb. I'm gonna call you by the first name you gave me. That's the name your mama gave you, right? He's like, yeah. I said, okay, that's what I'm calling you. I'm not calling you Dirt Bomb. Now, why is that? Because this guy had gotten conditioned and used to being called Dirt Bomb. And he carried his nature and how he was, because we worked in an auto shop, don't get me wrong, but for all intents and purposes, many times you look at him and he looked like he crawled up out of a mud pit. All the time. It was all the time, would come in looking like that at times. Just dirt everywhere. Seriously. And if you get conditioned to hearing a certain name, you'll get conditioned to thinking that that's normal. One of the things that I got conditioned to in my life, I'll move back for a little bit, that I got conditioned to was, for a long time, I was conditioned to a lie about God that said that God doesn't love me, God hates me, and anything good that happens to me, God is waiting for me to get happy and just yank the rug just to laugh at me. Now, that's the perspective of God I live with. Why am I saying that? Because however you see God, however you see your place of origin will be how you live. That's why I told the story about the eagle identifying with the other eagle. The reality of what you walk out and live out right now is directly related to where you think and believe you came from. Where you believe that is your place of origin. If your place of origin for you looks like, well, I just came out of this type of household, or I came out of this side of the tracks, or I came from this background, and this is just all I am and all I'm ever going to be, then you're going to walk out and live those things just like that. Some people, listen, there are some people that at a very young age are handed guns and said that the only way in life is you're going to have to take somebody else's life. If you don't do it that way, somebody's going to take your life, so you got to take theirs first. There are kids that are taught that, and then they grow up to become adults, and then we see the mature version of that. Or maybe they're taught that your life is to live and serve other people with your body. And they're taught that, listen to me, all the way even as infants, conditioned. If you can't talk, do you know that there's something called muscle memory? That you can get conditioned, listen to me, they do studies on this, where you can condition someone without words, and just by the repetitive mechanicalness of the exercise, get you to react off of the muscle memory. I had a friend of mine years ago, and his father worked at a car plant that made cars, okay? And his dad used to tell me that he knew that line so well and had did it for so long. He said that at times he would be working, and at times when he was tired, he could be asleep, he said, and was still doing his job and know he was getting it right because he had done it that often. And I said, wow, that's called muscle memory. Or here's muscle memory for you. It has words, but maybe you work somewhere. Come on, if you listen to me, you know what I'm talking about. And you answer the phone. Hello, this is Harris Enterprises. 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 After that goes on for about a week, it might be all right. But after that goes on for several years, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, at some point you're going to be at home or on vacation. Hello, Harris Enterprises. How can I? Oh, shoot. I'm at home. I'm not at work. Why? Because by muscle memory, you got conditioned to that. So what am I saying? I'm saying that you can get conditioned to understanding something and walking out something based on repetitiveness. And many people have gotten conditioned to a repetitiveness about God that does not look anything like what Jesus revealed. I challenge people with this. I challenge people that if you believe that God is this way, and I'm just going to tell you, there's a lot of areas in different venues and places. Insurance companies even take, watch this, they call it acts of God. They have this wrote in, acts of God. Whenever there's tornadoes and they wreck a home or wreck a city and all of these things, and they call it, oh, well, that's an act of God. Where do you think they get that idea from? I'll tell you where they get it from. Watch this now. Just help you here. Okay? That when there is if you have Company A over here that maybe they produce oil, and then you have Company B over here and they produce oil. But Company A has a disgruntled employee one day and decides that while they're in the process of making the best oil that Company A can produce, they end up putting something in there that's not supposed to be there. And that person knows that once it gets into any car, it's going to just completely destroy it. When it comes out and they have to recall all of these vehicles and all of that money, Company B has just been consistent. And let's just say Company A has always been ahead of Company B. But once that happens and they find out who the employee was and that it was this person, no matter what, at the end of the day, everybody's going to remember this by the whole company. And they will judge the whole company based on what that one employee did. They will say, man, they must not be able to manage, right? If that got by, then what else got by? And it will hurt the credibility of Company A. Even if nobody else in Company A was involved, they will have bad credibility on this based on the one person that did that in the organization. And because, watch this now, the bigger the influence, the bigger the spread about that person or that company. If you think of big companies, large companies everywhere right now, ones that are well known, if something happens with that company, it's a bit more difficult to do damage control a lot of times because it spreads so fast because they have so much influence. And likewise, if you are a person that represents Company A and represents, let me give you a quick story. This is a true story. This is an actual story that happened. It was with Pepsi and Coca-Cola. And if my memory serves me correctly, there was an employee at Coca-Cola that was going to leave Coke and go to Pepsi and share with Pepsi secrets about Coca-Cola. Pepsi actually got a hold of Coca-Cola and told them about the incident and chose not to act on or do anything with what this person brought to them. Now here's the thing. When they put that out publicly, what that did for Pepsi, it moved them up. Because now everybody would know, wow, Pepsi did that? Man, that says a lot about them. But it was out in the public. And because of influence, it spread. So what am I saying? I'm saying that there are people that have represented this God who created all things, and maybe they have not done a great job of that. And people have developed ideas and constructs about God and said, well, I'm scared of God because, wow, if I go into church, man, I might burn the place down or lightning might hit me. Well, man, I'm kind of ducking and dodging God because, man, I'll probably get hit with lightning any day now. And we've got these ideas about God. Well, God is bringing this sickness to teach me something. And can I tell you something? A lot of these ideas that people carry today about God come from people that represented God. Just being honest. Because here's the thing. If, like, I was going to tell you, you know, as far as sports is concerned, how interested I am depends on my kids that play it. Just being honest. And how good I am in it, well, it depends how lucky I get that day. Truth is, if I get lucky and by chance beat somebody, I'm going to take that as a win and retire after that one. So I can just keep that one, win under my belt. I win against somebody else in a game of basketball. We ain't playing again. I'm going to take that one to the house and nope, I'll beat you and I'm done. Even if it was just by 1 point, barely. Now here's the point. The point is that people that represent God and reveal God and choose to say this, okay, a lot of people gravitate their idea and understanding about God from that. I had a guy tell me this. He says, Chris, I just really feel like that God's just getting ready to punish me because of all the stuff I've done. And he was just feeling like he'd done so much that he was just going to get punished. And here's my challenge. I said, I want you to go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I want you to just read through about the life of Jesus. And I want you to find somewhere, just one place, where Jesus would have treated you the way he's treated anybody else within Scripture. And FYI, before some people start getting on, well, you know, when Jesus turned over those tables and he got that whip and drove all those people out of here, man, that would be it, right? Well, let me just give you context to that. When that happened, listen, just to be fair, the only people that Jesus blasted in Scripture, you ready for this? For lack of better word purposes, just to keep it in so people can understand this, it was the religious church folk, the religious leaders. Read it. Anybody that Jesus ever, and here's the thing, what was it that made Jesus so angry? I'm going to tell you what it was. People being oppressed, being beat up, beat down, told you're less than, told you'll never be than, unless you go over here and you follow our pattern and do what we do. That's the only way you can be anything, is it starts with us. And that might sound a bit like, wow, yeah. How does it look like? Well, obey our tenets, do what we do, and you'll be welcomed into the club. That's how it comes across. Because if you don't, God, who we represent, doesn't like you. Here's my question, okay? It's going to show you something in your Bible that's in a Bible, and it's already there. It's been there before we got here. In Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Stop. Now, if somebody can find me one place where any of these organizations were there in the beginning, then we can talk. But the only one in the beginning, it starts with God. Or it starts with the Father. Okay? Try to throw this in here. Father is place of origin, where you came from. What is the substance that you came out of? Because that matters. It's like hot sauce. I don't know if you know this, but hot sauce, when they make it, most all things that they make it from a concentrated place. And it's got a core place that it comes from. There's a couple other things that they add in to make it personal to maybe where it came from. But ultimately, it'll have a core place from where this comes from. So when it says in the beginning, God, okay, that word God is actually simply a title. It's not a name, it's a title. The name behind that where it says God is Elohim. Elohim means one of authority and power. Okay? Now, so in the beginning, the Father, named Yahweh Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Again, Father is simply a place, listen, functionality in context of Scripture, it's going to be where you came from, your place of origin. This right here is the place of origin where people came from, where humanity comes from, where all things in creation come from. It starts at this point right here. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's everything in the earth, everything in the heavens. Heavens speak to actually galaxy, the cosmos, things such as that nature. So everything that has been created, every galaxy, the ones they keep finding, all things that were made and have been made were made in and through and beginning here. Okay? The next one says, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God, again, God is a title. God is a title like, I'm a dad, and there are many people that are dads. And, you know, it's a title. Little quick story there. They got me a shirt that said Dad, Best Dad. And I went to a public event one time, and you ought to have seen, I had so many men coming up to me. It's a guy thing messing with me and say, hey, just to let you know I'm the best dad, right? And so, even though I had a shirt with it there. And so, anyways, so God title, hovering over the face of the waters. All right, so I'm going to begin to bring it down to a close right there. Because what I'm going to pick back up with is get into the details of the very nature of God and how God is. But how we started with is Father speaks to place of origin and where you come from. And here's a hint to next week what this looks like. A hint is, if you can't see it in Jesus, you can't see it in your place of origin, where you came from. Okay? All species, animals, all of them, they know who they are and what they are by looking at their parent that they came from. If an eagle doesn't see its parent waddle around like a penguin, you know what it's not going to do? Waddle around like a penguin. Let me go so far as to say this. Even if, because they've seen those things, that maybe you have one that's born and not in the same group. For somehow, one bird or one animal, like a cub, maybe, ends up with another that's not its mom. There are videos where dogs have nursed maybe a cat or something, or something like that. But you know what happens to that one thing that's out of place from the rest of it? It still acts oddly different than everything else that it's around. Even if you put it in the same litter with them, if it did not came from them, it may still drink from the same milk. But as it grows and matures, it's going to figure out, man, it's a bear cub in the middle of lion cubs. Man, I don't look like the rest of these guys. Something's kind of off here. Well, here's the thing. Something is off. And how you view God will directly affect your impact about how you walk out life. And it'll affect your impact about how you represent or present God. Whether you believe in God or not, you are going to present a place of origin. You're going to present something that's going to be leading people to be more like what your main priority is and how you see God. So, Father, place of origin, and if you can't see it in Jesus, you can't ever see it in God. If Jesus did it, then it can be verifiable. I'm talking about, listen, this is my homework. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I challenge you. Look in the life of Jesus. Jesus wasn't talking to try to destroy anybody. And if you give me some time with us, one thing you'll find out about here at Grains of Sand is that we do a lot of killing of sacred cows. There's a lot of language and things and break things down. But Father, place of origin, and if you can't see it in Jesus, you can't see it in God. If you want to know, listen, how you walk out something is going to be directly related to you understanding where you came from. And if you believe that where you came from, if what you believe about God is wrapped up in destructive, man, if I'm not perfect, God's wiping me out, it's going to color a lot of how you are with other people. If you're like one of those like perfectionists and you're really either tough on yourself or tough on other people to be a standard, and you still can't even find that standard, it might be rooted and connected to how you see God, and because how you see God is going to be how you think God sees you. And you're thinking, I have to do all this so I can please God, and God accepts me. And that's just not true. The truth is that God has already accepted you. Now you have to wake up to the reality that it's true, because it's not going away. The truth is that you are already loved. Now you have to wake up to the reality of it, that it's true, because it's not going away. All right, I'm going to close with this here. And it's a prayer, and really it's like a confession here. But I encourage you to pray this with me as you're listening to this. And all you need to do is to say, I do, if you agree with this. Okay, and I call this the prayer of adoption. Whether you know it or not, you have been brought into the family of God. And Jesus prayed when he was being crucified, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The truth is that Jesus has pulled you into his life, and repentance is you finding out what that life is like. Repentance is it being revealed to you that Jesus did something for you and in you, and you have become something, and now you need to know about it. Okay? Let me go here. How many people were in the garden in the beginning with the first man and woman? Okay? Nobody. So we can agree nobody was there to have anything to do with what we purport has happened in humanity. Oh, and I got to get to that. I'm trying not to. I got to break this up. But what we're going to look at here is a prayer of adoption and how God is. So here we go. I'm going to say something, and then after it, you say I do if you agree with this. All right. Do you take the Lord to love you in a way like you've never been loved before, with no limits and no separation ever between you and God? Do you take the Lord to lavish you with joy all the time and see you through the lens of joy always? Do you take the Lord to remain forever at peace with you and give you peace always as yours and forever? Do you take the Lord to treat you with patience always and to always remain patient with you? Do you take the Lord to be kind to you all the time and to constantly reveal kind thoughts towards you always? Do you take the Lord to be good to you all the time, above and beyond all that you can think, ask, or expect? Do you take the Lord to remain faithful to you all the time, despite any unbelief or doubt that you may struggle with at times, and that the Lord remains at peace with you, and that any unfaithfulness on your part will in no way ever invalidate the faithfulness of God towards you? The Lord's faithfulness is consistent and dependent in and on the love that comes from God, not something that is in and of you by yourself. Do you take the Lord on those terms? I do. Do you take the Lord to interact with you all the time, no matter what you may get yourself into, and that the Lord will treat you with gentleness? Do you take the Lord to discipline you but knowing your frame and correcting you through love and gentleness. Do you take the Lord like that?
I do.
Okay, the last one. Do you take the Lord to give you self-control so that you can choose to follow the very nature of Jesus and take on the name of God and the nature of God as your own and find out everything about the nature of God? Do you take the Lord like that?
I do.
Okay. Now, having said that, if you stay with me in the coming weeks and as we get better with our recording and such, then the challenge is to take on and be consistent with the nature of God. Now, I've got friends of mine that exercise and go to the gym much more than I do. And one thing they will tell you is you don't go into the gym and work out for a week and expect to begin to get gains and results. And that's the only time you went in. And after that week, you're looking at your body and checking the scale and you're like, man, how come ain't no gains? What's going on? Because if you want to look like that picture that you got on your wall, and that person that you saw that inspires you to say, I want to look like that. That's going to be me one day. All the while, we may not even look anything close to that. When you begin to get into the gym and you begin to practice repetitively in a direction with a goal in mind to say, this is what I want to look like, do you know what will happen? Eventually you'll begin to turn, your body will begin to turn out those things and you'll begin to take shape and look like what you're looking at. So if you want to look like what you're looking at, you got to remain focused on what you're looking at. When you remain focused on what you're looking at, I'm talking about looking at God through the lens of Jesus only and finding out how God has always been. If you want to know how God has always been, it's better to look at someone that's always been with God. Wouldn't you agree? So this is what Jesus is saying, and this is the challenge that we're going to go through here at Grains of Sand. So that's all I have time for today. I thank you all for being with me. Again, we are meeting here at the Care Center in person. 4105 Bells Lane, is that there?
I believe so.
Okay, I think I got it right. If I didn't get it right, I'll come back and correct it, but I'm pretty sure it's at 4105 Bells Lane here in Louisville, Kentucky. We meet here between 9 and 10. We do allow for question and answers. This is where I come off air. It's because I'm going to be coming off air here and allow for questions, answers, dialogue, because we do that here. We do dialogue here, and we invite it, and guess what? We don't run from the hard questions. And I have people here that can verify that we have challenging conversations and we ask hard questions. And you know what the wild thing about it is? Just to encourage you, even if we don't agree, we are still good friends afterwards. We are not ones that believe here that you got to agree with everything that we have in order to be associated with us. The only thing that I would ask you to agree with is what we just did. Agree that God is love and God actually loves you and always wants to be good to you all the time. All right, have a great day. Know that you're loved. And here at Grains of Sand Ministry, where we teach you to be effective by acknowledging every good thing that is within you. Have a great day.